Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm so excited to have this person on the show because he's going to give us an opportunity to make us come to a very important understanding that our gut isn't always the right decision to follow. Alex Castro was born in Buffalo, New York on a seriously uncomfortable midsummer day to immigrant parents from Argentina. After being told how much it snows in winter, his parents quickly moved to Sudbury, Massachusetts. He grew up in what can only be categorized as one of New England's most progressive WASP nest communities. Zip code 01776, the year of the Revolutionary War, where he only knew how to speak Spanish until nursery school. So he fit right in. Alex is an only child, which explains a lot. His late father was a physicist that spoke 3 languages, Spanish, English, and calculus. His mother is an avid gardener who executed marvelous designs and concepts with the support of her child labor team, Alex. Throughout his childhood, Alex was regularly enrolled in a number of activities, including riding horses, which he was allergic to, figure skating classes in the same rink where all of his friends would play hockey, and soccer. It was the 70s, which led Alex to realize for college that he needed to move as far away from home before enrolled in pottery class. He made his big move to attend Northeastern University, which was 40 minutes away from home, where he competed as a member of the national championship crew team and received his bachelor degree in art and architecture. As if it was not enough, he did postgraduate classwork at Harvard, leading him to wanting to leave New England, so he moved west. Although Alex had held a job since he was 13 years old, his first professional job was with United Engineers working on international airport projects where at best he was tolerated by his uppers. Realizing the corporate life was not for him at 26, he worked on his first startup, Land Info International. That created the first off-the-shelf digital map set of the entire US that was available on floppy CD overnight. Well, it was the 90s. There was no internet. After the company was sold off and the investors reaped all the benefits, Alex moved on to Transamerica as VP of Operations and Technology to be part of a team to turn around a struggling division. After 2 years of living that dream, the division had nearly tripled in size and was sold off, and Alex was able to get back to entrepreneurial life, where he was one of the 3 founding partners of MCorp. MCorp, a management and technology consulting firm now in its 15 years, being guided by Alex's CEO. They are transforming into a platform company featuring the REM score, or the Ready Measurement Score, which is featured in his book, Measure, Execute, Win, Avoiding Strategic Initiative Debacles and Knowing What Your Business Can and Can't Do Well. Alex lives in Forest Hill, California with his life partner because he secretly wants to be Will Smith. Alex Castro, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I hope so. Thank you for having me on.
And I'm glad you're here, and I know we're going to have a good time. But I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
You bet. My passion is about helping really good ideas and innovations see reality through the ability to understand your execution readiness for that initiative that you have in mind. There are so many good ideas. There's so many great innovations and visions, from everything from S&P 500 companies down to startups that are really trying to drive some great ideas into the market. But the big gap is between idea and realization. We have that execution gap. And what I'm trying to do is point out, how do you correct some of those vulnerabilities that prevent good execution?
You know, as you're saying that and going through the book, I would also say that it's quite possible that the inability to do this execution is also hampering or undermining the ability to have even more greater ideas, because people end up just doing a lot of stuff, you know, instead of thinking and solving problems. In the book, you talk about 50% of all strategic decisions fail. And I think that failure rate is causing a whole lot of squashing, don't you?
I do. And so to really help put it into a better context is that leaders are, especially in publicly traded companies, are trying to drive tremendous growth. And they're trying to do it in the face of a market that is moving faster than ever before with higher expectations. And it's a razor's edge between success and outright failure. And there isn't that opportunity to circle back around for another chance at it because you have a competitor right on your heels. There's a lot of very good, very smart people in the market. And if you have that idea, somebody else does too. And it's probably 2 or 3 people. And they're going after the same customer set that you are. And so what we see, and I have seen through the years of consulting and working with customers, is that a lot of times those visions that leaders put out, those directives that leaders fund, are then put into operations for execution. And when those things don't work, they begin to erode the confidence of employees and the overall operational scalability of the company to rely on the leader's vision to execution. And so what happens is that people become less and less committed to purpose. And so you may have a football team that has a tremendous coach, tremendous front office that has got a great vision, treats players incredibly well, sees them, hears them, treats them truly as they want to be treated. But if they can't put together a winning record, it's only a matter of time before those great players begin to attrition away to a winning organization. And so where that translates really into the space that you really drive is that we rely, and your listeners and viewers rely on good customer outcome, right? And so one of the methods as an example for measuring that is a net promoter score, right? And so customers will provide feedback on an NPS associated with the delivery or the execution of what the company is doing. And the only way that you can get a solid NPS score isn't by having a friendly customer service voice. It's not about having, a very great culture that envelops the customer, because all those things are wonderful, but the customer is only really looking at, are you delivering on the promise that you made to me? And those other elements add to the promise. And if you can't deliver on that promise, what happens is that your NPS scores go down and your ability to grow sales and execute further vision becomes harder and harder. And what that also then internally begins to do, it begins to erode employees' connection to purpose.
As you're talking, I start hitting on so many different elements and so many different variables that so many different organizations are dealing with. And I would dare to say that most often this manifests itself when people start saying things internally like, hey, it's the flavor of the month. What are we doing now?
Right.
You can't get anything done around here. And I think in
right.
The real world, that's how that kind of part brings itself forward. But you talk about, and you talked about the whole velocity of today. You talk about the whole importance of the execution piece on how it undermines so many things when we're unable to do that. And we also know that because of this rapid rate of change, doing things that way we used to do it, just even 3 years ago, is not the way that we can do them today. So how can leaders differentiate today?
Really, at the end of the day, we want to outperform everybody, right? From our earliest, memory, we were raised, all of us were raised to win, right? Our mentors, our coaches, our parents, our teachers, all of them or somebody in our life throughout our upbringing taught us or tried to position us to win, right? And it wasn't about putting you in an easy position, right? That said, hey, I'm only going to give you things that are easy for you to accomplish. What they did is they positioned you in a way that you could succeed. They wanted to stretch you, they wanted to grow you, and things like that. And that's what leaders do for the company. They set a vision to go out and push the company beyond what it is today. The challenge is that sometimes that vision or that idea or that initiative strategy is so juicy, it's so inviting to make that leap as a company to the next step, that leaders forego the consideration of, can we execute this? Can we actually do it? And the thing that the unintended consequence of that is that when employees and team members begin to see the erosion during execution, that the project's going to take longer, it's going to cost more, we're going to have to cut back on what the initial idea was in order to get it over the finish line, right? You're laughing because I think you can relate. It begins to demoralize and erode the connection to the company's purpose, but it also begins to erode their own professional growth, because the knee-jerk reaction from managers is to tighten down and get much more controlled over how things are running, right? We're going to turn the screws harder. We're going to manage harder. We're going to do things harder. And that just perpetuates the delivery issue, when at the end of the day, the problem was at the decision point. It was not, a lot of people enter into execution thinking, okay, we're going to get in there and, we're going to handle, they want to Newt Rockney the thing. They want to be the hero in the moment. And everybody who has been through this stuff or has been a professional for at least 2 years knows that you can put an A++ team on an awful idea, and the best result is you're going to get a C- with a lot of heavy lifting. And do you really want to leverage your resources in that way? Or do you want to understand what's going to prevent you from execution, make a decision to fund that initiative going forward? And if you do, what is it going to cost us, both from time and capital expense, to correct ourselves before we engage in the process? And does that fit within the window of opportunity? And if businesses can begin to consider execution capability as part of the overall formula between business case, financials, and execution readiness to make that decision, we're going to start to see a significant increase in capital performance within companies. And more importantly, you're going to start to see overall stock value, earnings per share, return on invested capital is going to skyrocket. And the companies that take on that attitude of measuring execution readiness before investing capital are going to be the ones that are going to begin to outperform the rest of the market.
I mean, when you start talking about that, I mean, a lot of people would just say, no, I mean, you just need to focus, right? But the problem with that is you start relying on things that cause, some of the issues you're talking about. So in other words, when we focus, all we're doing is just, actually using our gut in order to help us make the decisions. And so you talk about 85% of decisions, and I've seen studies on this that all fall within that 80 percentile range, is that's how senior level leaders actually make their decisions. It's gut feel.
Oh yeah.
There's a problem with that. Why? What's the problem?
Yeah. Well, the problem is that they've been missing an element of the decision process that they've had no ability to have in the past, right? They've missed, it's like in the 70s or 60s and 70s when banks began to use a credit score for lending, right? It used to be that if you were going to borrow money from me and I was your banker, I would come and I would talk to you, but then I'd go and I'd interview your employer, and I'd talk to your friends, and I'd want to know how stable you are and how good of a person you are within the community and things like that. And then I would make that loan that way. And that's how, believe it or not, the majority of executive decision making is done today, even in the largest companies in the world. And it's because they've missed having the opportunity to have the scoring or the data that says business case plus financials, which we all have today, plus readiness or execution readiness score equals decision. And it's that piece that they have missed. So they've substituted data with bias. They've substituted data with gut instinct. And I have executives, especially seasoned executives, who will sometimes take a little bit of umbrage with the fact that I'm saying, no, your gut is not accurate, or is as accurate as you think it is, right? Because that piece comes out and says, well, in my experience, it's like, yes, but what your experience does is it makes you a great wood chipper, okay? So what it does is that you can take any log from any tree, any shrub, doesn't matter whether it's oak or cedar or birch or whatever, and you're feeding it into that wood chipper, and that wood chipper is able to process that raw data into an outcome that is cogent. That's what experience does for you. It increases your ability to take in raw information, process, and create some kind of a cogent output. The difference is that a wood chipper has gears that are tuned in and blades that are tuned in and a mechanism that's been refined that can really judge and evaluate what that data is that's coming in. And that's the piece that has been missing out of executive decision-making. So it's not that executives are bad or incapable. In fact, it's the opposite. They have very good visions. We've had conversations with executives from startups to top, Fortune 5 companies, and the ideas they have are fantastic. And what they all realize and they all struggle with is when they're in the precipice of funding that initiative and investing their capital into that initiative, they're all like, can we actually get this done? That's the thing that they worry about, because they don't want to wind up into a situation in the press where they're being called out for the fact that they're spending money and nothing's happening, right? And so it's a lot of that decision-making that is the root cause of where the downstream problems with culture come from, employee retention come from, that employee purpose, your connection to purpose of the company comes from. And the Band-Aid approach has been, let's focus on bringing resources in to talk about culture, to talk about purpose, to talk about overall engagement of the employee. And it's artificial, because what that is trying to make up for is the fact that employees are consistently seeing initiatives being handed to them that they can't be successful on. And they know they can't succeed on because they have no voice, or they understand some of the mechanics better than the executives do. And where the gap is that in today's world, you have an operating model, because we live in that Six Sigma lean world where operations is focused on current need. And when that strategy comes into play, that new box goes up that curve of growth, and there's that overlap between our future state and our current state. Depending on how aggressive that is, that overlap is what is relevant to the future state. And everything else either has to be removed or redone. So your people, process, and technology of today are not necessarily in alignment or the best ones that are going to propel you into the future. And it is that oversight, is that misread by executives that gets a lot of companies into this capital drain process. And so what happens? Companies start to do stock buybacks. Companies start to do acquisitions simply to do acquisitions. So 1 in 5 acquisitions produces value, right? The other 80% either do nothing or actually retard value in a company. 1 in 5 back office systems actually does what it is meant to do. The other 80% detract value or consume resources that could be better placed in the company. And 1 in 2 strategic initiatives are successful. And I've heard people saying, you're being generous. I'm like, I'm just going out the academic research data. I'm not going to just start, bringing up data. So you've seen some of it, and I think people intuitively are very aware of it, but they've never had a method for how do I correct it? And so there's just been a lot of Band-Aid work.
And I've seen it at all levels. And so even what you're talking about, when you look at the growth of today, it is all done by acquisition. Well, that means when you start talking about growth by acquisition, you start talking about this whole debt load issue. And that's for servicing debt is what most companies are doing now. So, but the bias thing happens, And I want to get a little bit more into that because it's so important. It happens
Yeah.
at all levels. So for me, I have
Yeah.
a lot of discussions with customer experience people, and we're talking about their customer experience, their customer journey, customer emotion and connection engagement, all of those things, that whole execution component, this, that, and the other. And I hear it on a regular basis, and it's a pet peeve of mine when people say, well, I know I wouldn't want that to happen to me. I wouldn't like that. I'm like, you're not your customer.
Right.
You should not be answering on behalf of your customer.
That's
Stop
true.
doing
Yeah.
that. That in itself is a major bias.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 8 in the book, and believe me, there's more biases, but you focus in on these 8 because I'm sure you see them most often. And you have the confirmation bias, the framing bias, the anchoring bias, sunk cost bias, Monte Carlo bias, the self-assessment bias, the availability bias, and the bandwagon bias. And you explain all those in the book. But when I start looking at all these, there's no way that they're all weighted equally. Is there one or two that kind of stand out as being detrimental?
It depends on the type of thing that you're doing. So if you're doing an acquisition, there are some biases that have more weight than other biases. If you're doing a new product launch, again, so it's the weighting depending on the type of initiative that you're doing and the scale of the initiative that you're doing that is going to bring that bias more forward. And so, in acquisitions, we tend to look a lot for confirmation, right? In the sense that I believe by buying this company, we are going to enhance our sales or our opportunity within markets, our ability to grow that we can't do organically, and I'm going to get better results out of that. And so we look for acquisitions that are going to confirm that bias. The number one problem with acquisition integration is culture. The number one issue with acquisition, lack of performance, or I hate to use failure because it's such a subjective term, is integration, right? So I bought this company, how I'm going to integrate it into my business. And that's where the wheels come off the cart, right? The ideas are fantastic. This is not about a lack of great innovation. This is not about a lack of vision. This is not about a lack of people who are afraid to take risks. That is not our global business problem, right? It's been rehearsed and practiced so much in the last 10, 15 years that cultures are very driven towards those things. The challenge has now translated into what Thomas Edison said, right, 100 plus years ago, which is vision without execution is hallucination. Okay? So if we can't do the thing that we see, that we envision, it's irrelevant. And what leaders today have to ask themselves is, am I investing capital into the right initiatives, number one? And if there are initiatives that we really want to do, an acquisition, new product, new market, back office optimization, or some kind of cloud migration, or something that is going to make us more competitive or give us a better position in the market, what landmines, what picadillos are going to come out of my business, smack me in the face as I'm going along, that now I have one project to do something that's now splintered into a principal project and now a micro project, because the micro project is, I've discovered this vulnerability, now I have to go fix it while I'm trying to execute on the main focus. And that's now draining resource away, and it's costing us more, and so on and so on and so on.
So for me, even as you're talking, I start thinking about this whole, talking about that mission, vision, purpose thing, is that there's a whole lot of goal setting that happens. And for me, I was just even on this call just the other day where a CEO was saying, and essentially pushing and driving, trying to get things delivered and saying, well, we have this goal. Well, we have a goal of doing this, and we have a goal of doing that. And he was referring to something that hasn't happened for the past 4 or 5 months that in his mind, they had a goal of doing every single month. And I'm like, but how can you even get it done? That wasn't even part of the discussion. It was about, this is a goal. How are we going to get it done? There's a problem in that.
Well, but that's the thing that I think is holding back a lot of issues, right? And so I wrote an article that got published in Fast Company a few weeks ago, and I talked about WeWork. And the whole debacle around that entire element and that valuation of $45 billion. And the thing that I was trying to point out in that article was really the fact is like, maybe they are really worth 45 billion. The challenge was that every round of funding, they weren't measuring execution readiness for that time and period for the initiatives they were looking to do. And it was mostly because the board and the leadership were using very 70s and 80s management theory for a new millennium type of business. And it was in conflict. It was in direct conflict. And if they had used, and I'm not promising anything, but what I'm offering is that if they had used that measurement element to understand in the funding process, the investors and the board, that whether they were ready to make that leap or what was going to get in their way to make that leap, if they could have understood that, spent time correcting those issues, they could have reached that valuation. They wouldn't have to be in the press today because they have a great business plan. They have a wonderful operating model. The culture that they produce on site is fantastic, right? People love investing and working in those spaces. And it's the hindrance of old thinking with new innovation, new ideas that is really holding the market back. And that's why I really believe that 50%, that companies globally are underperforming by 50%. And capital markets are then underperforming by 50%. If people think today that the stock market and the valuations are bananas, think of what would happen if you had a 25% increase in EPS on every company in the S&P 500. And all you have to do is take the time to measure execution readiness before you invest capital, correct the abilities or the vulnerabilities that you have before you engage, and you're going to see acceleration to market. You're going to see acceleration to vision. And people are going to start to realize innovation faster. They're going to start to realize performance at a higher level. And I think everybody benefits from that. And it's just this anchoring in this old traditional thinking because there just hasn't been anything offered to them from a management theory standpoint that says, can you do it? And now they have the opportunity to have that data, and it's just operationalizing it, right? And I truly believe you're going to start to see companies really start to deliver on all kinds of promises that are just fantastic.
So really, for me, when you're talking about that, I start thinking about visibility into your business. And many people who are at that higher level, don't have that visibility into the business. And the Ready measurement score allows them to now have visibility so that they start connecting all of these things appropriately. Now, there's 14 domains in this Ready measurement score, and you actually have them, in different categories so that they can get more visibility. What are those categories?
Well, the categories they come to begin with, they were developed based on academic and professional research that has been done over the last 20 years. And it's married into our own data. And so the thing that we wanted to look at is what are the elements that are truly affecting execution at the root cause level, not what the perception is, right? So our technology clients are traditionally go after and say, look, the project didn't do well because the coding wasn't good or the architecture wasn't good or we picked the wrong software to do whatever. And that's not the problem, right? Project management practices are exceptional. The training is exceptional. The people in those practices are exceptional. The issue is that they have been handed an initiative that fundamentally, because the business is not positioned optimally to deliver it, they cannot deliver it, right? They are now having to fix the business while they're trying to deliver the initiative. And so the domains, everything from alignment to management to operational capability to business rules, maturity to vision, and organizational adaptability. We have metrics in there that allow you to pinpoint exactly what is the root cause of what is going to trip you up and how do you correct it. So as an example, there are entities that try to do something that's very aggressive, very new. And they're trying to transform their business from a current state of operations and potentially either reacting from a market or that they are see an opportunity and want to take advantage. But they have a current operating model that's been in practice for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, whatever it may be. And oftentimes you'll see what we call an organizational adaptability problem, meaning that the staff and methods, people, process, and technology of today are the leap from today to that future state of vision is so deep, so aggressive, that those folks are pumping the brakes as they're trying to deliver on the initiative. And they're not consciously trying to subvert the business. It's that fear of that leap that begins to introduce issues. And so they withhold information or don't understand about, contributing, or they have this sort of, I'm going to wait and see before I really commit to this. And that in itself is really slowing the initiative. And so we measure those elements, and within each one of those domains, there are multiple themes under those domains. So as an example, people talk about alignment. They talk about, okay, is the business in alignment? Well, that's a good consideration. That's one of the first domains that we have. But alignment, you have really three themes in alignment. You have alignment to strategy, right? Is the initiative we're about to do in alignment with the strategy and the vision of what we have, right? Or is this a larky kind of a thing, okay? Is it in alignment to market need? Does the market want this? Does the customer want this enhancement? Does they want to, right? But the other part is, and the third is it in alignment with our culture as an operating unit? Is the thing that we're about to do, the acquisition, the new product, the new market, or the back office, automation, let's say, is that in alignment with who we are as a business? And if it violates one of those thematic elements, it violates our alignment. So you can't simply state, oh, I'm out of alignment. Well, okay, where are you out of alignment, right? What is that? And traditionally, that type of analysis has taken between a month to 3 months to get. It comes back as opinion, and it's not actionable. And what the book talks about, and what I tend to try to profess, is that needs to be a metric, like a credit score. It has to be something that is understood very quickly, that has actionable data associated to it. You understand from a pinpoint level, precision, and should be done in days, not weeks or months. And that's really where the acceleration component comes in.
Well, without a doubt, I mean, executives want to be able to just make decisions easily and not have to understand variables and independent variables and all of those types of things, and causation and correlation. And I mean, that would just drive them nuts. So, I mean, when you start talking about all of this, I mean, gosh, I can imagine there's just a slew of different emotions. And that's kind of where it all starts from. And one of the things that we use on the show to help us be focused on doing the right thing and maybe getting visibility and all that are quotes. Yeah. Is there a quote or two that you like that you can share?
Well, I think I shared one earlier, right, which is about, vision without execution, right? It's hallucination. There's a couple that I share in the book a little bit too, which is somebody told me a very long time ago that if it isn't written down, it doesn't exist, right? And so, a lot, and it kind of feeds into, you have to really do the homework and the analysis a little bit. But I also have a quote in there from Steve Jobs, which is, sometimes you just, fundamentally, it's sometimes you have to let go of some things, and you have to say no a lot to get to the right yes. And executives, I think in general, managers, there's a lot of fear in that, because it's like, what if I'm missing that acquisition that could have blown us up, that could have made us huge or whatever? And what I'm trying to respond with is, don't shy away from that. Measure yourself, measure your ability to execute on that. Is that because there are times there are acquisitions that look amazing, but then suddenly what happens is you try to integrate that acquisition, and the whole business just disintegrates because it's too much. It just culturally didn't fit, operationally didn't fit. the acquisition may have been X, but the integration is X to the power of 3. And so the whole value element, the return on equity on that is just not there.
Well, for me, Alex, as we're going through all this, I'm thinking that there's no way possible that all of a sudden this just kind of popped out for you. It was a result of you probably going through frustrations, working with client frustrations. You talk about in the book, going slow to go fast, which is really the mantra of the Fast Leader Show. It's doing it right, putting in the work, and then your velocity will be enabled as a result of that. But we talked about on the show about, getting over the hump, and this is where a lot of these learnings come. Is there a story that you can share when you've gotten over the hump?
Well, I think that really where you've touched on a really great point, which is that, we originated as a consulting firm, and we were doing a lot of management consulting, meaning we were working with strategy, acquisition, consulting, elements associated with growth. And we were also doing technology consulting, which was how do you now apply technology to enhance that experience to move the agenda forward. And I can safely say that 90% of our engagements over the last 15 years, over hundreds and hundreds of customers and billions of dollars of invested capital in the initiatives our customers had, that 90% of our clients were not at a position of readiness when they brought us in, right? They brought us in and were saying, okay, well, now that you're here, you're going to figure all this out as part of the execution process. And what that left us in was either in a negative position where we had to then take on work that we didn't anticipate, or we had to create some kind of retrenching and change the scope of the initiative, which then just upset everybody. Because, the last thing you want is, if you're going to build a home, the last thing you want on day one is the contractor coming in and saying, oh, well, I thought you already had these things in place. Now I have to go do it. So now you have to change the nature of our arrangement. And it just upsets people, right? Because, well, no, this is what I hired you for. And so what we needed to do was develop an onboarding method for our customers. And in doing that onboarding method, we went out and started to do the research and understanding, are we isolated in our thinking or are we more mainstream in our thinking? And it turned out we were more mainstream in our thinking. And we started to develop a method for onboarding companies or customers through a readiness measurement as sort of like an initial part of the engagement that would help identify where the customer needed to do some things in order for the initiative to truly meet their success points. And when we started to utilize that, customers really reacted very well in the sense it's like, this is fantastic to know this now because I don't want to know this 6 months from now, right? Or 3 months from now. And it really began to shape up much better execution on initiatives for the customer side. And we realized that this could be an actual methodology to increase overall decision making. And so it's more of a general story, but this is the genesis of where this came out of. It's out of practice and out of research to really realize and what behavioral economists have been publishing in their own work, as well as some of the best noted publications globally for the last 20 years, and saying the decision bias of executives is what is holding back growth and what is affecting retention, experience, purpose connection, engagement, and the overall effect on culture.
So now things are, I think, becoming a little bit more clear for you, and you can see that you have something that could solve a massive amount of global issues for organizations of all types. So when I start thinking about all this, I mean, you got the book, you're doing the transition onto a platform and all that you probably have, like we kind of talked about a moment ago, goals, right? So when you think about goals that you can execute, what's one of them?
One of them, I believe, is being able to influence the decision process at the C-suite level in everything from global S&P companies to newborn startups. Is really understanding that know before you leap element, right? Because again, the thing that we really want to influence is the fact that we see so many really great ideas being left by the wayside or just pittering out because they were gapping on that execution piece. And if they had just done a little bit of work on the front end, they could have catapulted into something really amazing. And I would love to see more success coming out of a lot of the initiatives and the ideas that are out there today. And it's execution that's retarding it. And we want to be able to lift the fog and create clarity in the decision-making process so people can engage and address those vulnerabilities that are really holding them back.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Alex, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Alex Castro, are you ready to Hoedown?
I am ready to Hoedown.
Yeah. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I think honestly, it's my own biases on how I see, the world and patience and wanting to roll out my model and REM score and everything else. I try to do that. I try to jump, put the cart before the horse. So I'm guilty as much as anybody else is.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Best leadership advice has been to stay in the moment, to stay very connected to the current rather than being lost in the future or the past.
And what is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I am an unrelenting pit bull of personality, and I will just go at it and at it and at it, and I just don't even think about not getting there. And so it helps a lot, but it also has its challenges. Yeah.
And what is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
I think one of my best tools as a leader is being part of a CEO mentoring group. I belong to Vistage International. I'm not, plugging or anything, but it's helped me in understanding what is, it's what I don't know, what I don't see, the things from a leadership position and growing myself. And so it's, I really appreciate having that mentoring myself.
And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre. Of course, we'll put a link to Measure, Execute, and Win on your show notes page as well.
Yes. I would say really anything by Malcolm Gladwell. He does a tremendous job and does it in such a elegant way of connecting the dots and helping you really understand what he does. A lot of root cause. It's like, this is what's happening, but it actually, the genesis of it was really down here, and really helps you see that journey. And so I would encourage people to read Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Alex Castro. Okay, Alex, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25 and you can take all the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only take one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you and why?
I think it would be to cultivate what it is that you profess a lot, which is emotional intelligence. To really invest in growing and enhancing my own emotional intelligence and how I approached both personal and professional aspirations. I think it would have enhanced the journey by multiples to where I am today. And unfortunately, we weren't, I didn't grow up, or, in 25, I was not in an age where emotional intelligence was a recognized thing, and I wish it was. And for those who are younger, invest in it because it will help you a lot. It will really, really help you a lot.
Alex, I had fun with you today. How can the Fast Leader Legion connect with you?
You can connect with me at remscore.com. I also have alexcastro.io, which is my own page. I do public speaking engagements for anything from a small group of executives to keynote talks, and would love to come and talk to your audiences anywhere they feel that could add value for them. I think that when I do speak to audiences, it helps to begin to reposition some thought process and helps in really seeing, okay, this is how we're going to get there.
Alex Castro, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and helping us all get over the hump.
Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.